All right, let's take a deep dive into Christmas Awakening. It sounds like a pretty typical holiday movie title, but the script's got a lot more going on.
Definitely not your average Hallmark film.
So what's the gist?
Well, we've got a family in New Orleans, the Dailies, and they're dealing with the aftermath of a pretty traumatic Christmas past.
Traumatic how?
The father, Gabe, died on Christmas Eve.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, years ago. And the story really focuses on his son, Ellis. He's basically become the Grinch, totally rejecting everything about Christmas.
Ah, I see. So a family dealing with grief, a son who despises Christmas, and all set against the backdrop of New Orleans. That's an interesting mix, I gotta say.
Yeah, and New Orleans has all those unique traditions, especially around the holidays, like the Réveillon dinner.
What now?
Réveillon. It's this amazing multi-course feast they traditionally have after midnight mass on Christmas Eve.
Wow, that sounds incredible.
Oh yeah, think daube glacé, which is this rich beef and veal stew, and then croquembouche, a towering pastry made of cream puffs.
Oh man, my mouth is watering already.
Yeah, but I imagine food's probably the last thing on Ellis's mind. He seems pretty set on making everyone's holiday miserable, including his own.
Ah, right, right. So while the rest of the family's trying to hold on to those traditions?
Exactly. Anita, the mom, and Evie, the sister, they're trying to keep things as normal as possible.
Yeah.
That includes all the Réveillon traditions, but Ellis wants nothing to do with it.
So he just like sits in his room and sulks?
He does way more than sulk. Ellis actually becomes a debt collector, and a ruthless one at that. He seems to almost enjoy going after vulnerable people, especially during the holidays.
Oh, wow. So he's like actively trying to make Christmas worse for people? It's like he's punishing himself and the world.
That's exactly what it feels like. And you got to wonder, why is Ellis so much more deeply affected than the rest of his family?
I was going to ask that. What makes him so much angrier than everyone else?
Well, the script uses flashbacks to show us what happened, to kind of give us a glimpse into the past. And you start to see how complicated their grief really is, especially with the dad, Gabe.
What do you mean?
While you see Gabe struggling with PTSD after coming back from the war, nightmares, flashbacks, the whole 9 yards, it's really heartbreaking.
Hmm.
There are even some hints that he was thinking about suicide.
That's heavy stuff.
It is. And then to have him actually die on Christmas Eve, it just adds another layer of tragedy to it all.
Makes sense. So knowing all that about his dad, does it make Ellis's extreme reaction make more sense? Or is it even more frustrating? You'd think knowing his father's pain would make him want to treasure the good times even more, wouldn't you?
You would think, right. But that's the thing with grief, it can be so complicated and unpredictable. The script leaves it open to interpretation, really. You could say that Ellis is blinded by anger and guilt and just can't see past his own pain.
I can see that. Or maybe he's internalized his dad's struggles so much that he needs to reject everything that reminds him of him, even Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of brings us to this theme of forgiveness, which seems to be at the heart of the story. Forgiving yourself, forgiving others. It's like the key to Ellis finally moving on.
Right. There's that scene where Anita's on her deathbed and she basically begs Ellis to forgive himself and Gabe. Like she's giving him permission to finally let go of all that pain and anger he's been carrying around for so long.
Right, it's a turning point for him. And I think the script uses the choir robe to symbolize all of that. At first it represents Ellis's connection to faith and family, but then that connection gets shattered by his dad's death.
Yeah, it's like the robe becomes a symbol of everything he's lost.
Exactly. But then later on, when he finally puts it back on, it's this huge sign that he's ready to embrace those traditions again. He's stepping back into the light, so to speak.
Back into light. I like that. It's interesting how the script uses those visual elements, light and darkness. You see Gabe all shrouded in shadows during the flashbacks. It's like a visual representation of his inner turmoil.
Yeah, yeah. And even when Ellis is at his lowest point, there's this sense of heaviness, almost like a physical weight pressing down on him.
And I noticed the music, too. In the flashbacks, you hear all those Christmas carols, representing happy memories and all that. But then in the present, those carols disappear completely from Ellis's life.
It's like he's trying to erase any trace of joy. But as he starts to forgive and heal, those same carols come back. Like they're mirroring his reawakening to the spirit of Christmas.
The music becomes a character itself, reflecting Ellis's emotional state. That's really cool. But tell me, does he have some sort of epiphany and change overnight? Or is it a slower process?
Oh, no, definitely not a sudden thing.
Yeah.
It's a slow burn, for sure. You see him really grappling with his guilt, trying to make amends for his past mistakes.
It's interesting how his transformation is tied to Christmas, even though he hates it so much. But it's not all doom and gloom, right? We were talking about all those delicious New Orleans traditions. What's the deal with that Revlon dinner? Is it just about the food?
It's definitely more than just a meal. It represents something deeper for the Dailies.
Like what?
It's their way of holding on to their heritage, you know? Finding comfort in something familiar, especially when they're going through so much pain. It's like a thread connecting them to happier times.
I can see that food has a way of bringing back memories. Like certain smells can instantly transport me back to my childhood. So how does the script use this dinner? Does it, like, play a big role in the story?
It pops up at key moments in Ellis's journey. Like there's this one scene where he helps Evie prepare the dinner after their mom's surgery.
Oh, right.
It's subtle, but you can see him softening a bit,
Yeah.
reconnecting with his family and those traditions.
Maybe he's starting to realize those traditions aren't so bad after all.
And then later, when Ellis actually recreates the Réveillon dinner at the hospital,
Wait, what? He does?
yeah, for the patients and the staff, it takes on a whole new meaning. It's not just about family tradition anymore. It becomes this act of generosity and compassion.
Wow. That's really beautiful. It's like he's taking something that was a source of pain and turning it into something positive.
Exactly. It shows how traditions can evolve, take on new meaning.
Mm.
And speaking of evolving, what about Gabe, the dad? We talked about his PTSD, but what caused it? I mean, does the script delve into the reasons behind his struggles?
It does, actually. There are a few scenes where Gabe talks about feeling abandoned by the VA, like the system failed him. It adds a whole other layer of tragedy, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how we treat our veterans, the responsibility we had to take care of them after they've served. And it's interesting how Ellis tries to address that through his foundation.
Yeah, he's creating a legacy to honor his father's memory and help other veterans. It's like he's making amends for those systemic failures.
Right. It adds a lot of depth to his journey. Speaking of combat plays, we have to talk about that magical Negro character, the barber.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one. I noticed the script tries to give him some depth. He's not just there to dispense wisdom to Ellis, he's got his own life and everything.
Yeah, he's not just a one-dimensional character.
But I still wonder if it really avoids that whole trope or just reinforces it.
It's a valid concern. The trope's been criticized a lot, reducing black characters to just tools for white characters' development. And this script walks a fine line.
On the one hand, the barber does give Ellis some good advice and helps him figure things out.
Right, he's kind of a guide for him.
But on the other hand, his main purpose seems to be helping Ellis achieve redemption.
It definitely brings up some important questions about representation. Are we telling diverse stories responsibly? I'd be interested to hear what viewers think about this character.
Me too.
Yeah.
But let's get back to Ellis. We've talked about his transformation, but does the script actually show us how it plays out in his actions? Does he do anything differently?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You see him go from this heartless debt collector to a compassionate leader. Like he actually starts empowering his team to help struggling families. And there's even that scene where he puts together a Christmas dinner for people who can't be with their loved ones.
Really?
Yeah, just like his mom used to do.
That's pretty cool. He's really living out the true meaning of Christmas, going beyond the presents and all that.
He's embracing the generosity and compassion, for sure.
And it's not just those big gestures, right? What about those smaller moments?
You mean like his interactions with the kids at the hospital?
Yeah, exactly. He's so different with them, so much more empathetic and kind. It's obvious his heart is changing.
It really is. So did you find his transformation believable? I mean, he starts off so cynical and bitter.
You know what I did? The script shows all the ups and downs, the struggles and mistakes. He doesn't become a saint overnight. It's a process.
Which makes it more realistic, I guess.
Totally. It's relatable, It's not about being perfect. It's about growth and choosing a different path.
And the script uses all these specific details to make that growth feel real.
Like when he finally sings Hark, the herald angels sing in the church. It's not just some random Christmas carol.
No, it's a very deliberate choice.
It shows his spiritual reawakening. He's willing to embrace the beauty and hope of Christmas again.
It's a powerful scene. And, the script uses other sensory details, too. Like the descriptions of New Orleans, they're so vivid.
Oh, totally. It's like the city becomes a character itself. You can practically feel the energy, the charm, the history. It's like you're right there in the French Quarter.
Yeah, experiencing the magic of Christmas in New Orleans, right along with the characters.
Yeah, the sensory details are amazing.
Yeah.
You can practically smell those beignets and chicory coffee. But it's not just the setting, right? There's all that symbolism, too. It adds another layer to the whole story.
Oh, absolutely. Christmas Awakening is full of it. And it's done so well. It never feels forced or anything, like that recurring motif of the stolen Christmas.
Hmm.
It's more than just a plot device, isn't it?
Right. I was thinking about that. It's not just about Gabe taking the decorations. It's like it represents a deeper loss.
Exactly. It's the loss of innocence, the loss of joy. It's like their whole family's sense of wholeness gets shattered.
And then when Ellis rejects Christmas, it's like he's continuing that theft in a way.
Yeah, he's robbing himself and everyone around him of the chance to heal and reconnect.
He's become a shadow of his father, keeping that cycle of pain going. But then he breaks free, eventually. And that's where the choir robe comes in.
That robe, such a powerful symbol.
Right. First, it represents his connection to faith and family, and then it's gone, like everything else he lost.
And when he finally puts it back on,
Like he's coming home.
exactly, he's embracing his past, ready to move forward.
Hmm.
It makes you think about traditions in our own lives. What role do they play for us? How do they shape who we are?
That's a good question. And it's not just the big symbols like the stolen Christmas or the robe. There's all the light and darkness imagery, too.
Oh yeah, the visuals are so important.
Like Gabe, always in the shadows during those flashbacks.
It's a reflection of what he's going through inside, all that turmoil.
And with Ellis, when he's at his lowest, it feels so heavy, like there's this weight on him.
But then, as he starts to heal,
More light comes in.
literally, there are scenes where he's bathed in sunshine.
It's like a visual reminder that even when things are dark, there's always hope.
Always a chance for redemption.
And it's not just what you see, right? There's the sound, or the lack of sound. Like that scene in the hospital chapel when Evie's praying for her mom.
Oh, I remember that.
The silence is deafening.
It really is. Makes you feel the weight of her emotions.
And it's like the script is inviting us to feel it too, to reflect on our own experiences.
Those quiet moments are powerful. They give you space to think.
And then there's the foreshadowing. It keeps you guessing what's going to happen next. Like when Gabe is talking about how much he dreads Christmas.
Yeah, you can sense something bad is coming.
And those little hints about Ellis's past crush on Maya.
It makes you wonder if they'll get back together.
It all adds to the suspense, and it reminds you that our past shapes who we are.
It definitely adds layers to the story. But beyond all the plot twists and symbolism, I think the heart of Christmas Awakening is empathy.
I think so too.
Oh.
It makes you see the world through the eyes of people who are hurting.
Like Gabe and his PTSD.
Or those families struggling to make ends meet, especially around the holidays.
It reminds you that everyone's fighting their own battle, and a little kindness can go a long way.
Like what Ellis does, bringing that dinner to the hospital and starting his foundation.
It's a powerful message. We can all make a difference.
And it's a perfect message for the holiday season. Christmas Awakening makes you think about the real meaning of Christmas.
It's not about the presents or the decorations.
It's about love, generosity, and connection. It's a story that stays with you.
It leaves you feeling hopeful, inspired.
Couldn't agree more. It's a story about second chances, forgiveness, the power of human connection, and that about wraps up our deep dive into Christmas Awakening.
Thanks for joining us.
We hope you enjoyed it. Keep those brains working, and may your days be filled with joy and generosity.